My story is pretty unique, and this genetic testing got me in to get a screening and eventually found my cancer that I never knew I had or even knew I was at risk for, and probably saved my life, to be very honest. Had I let this go much further, my prognosis probably would not have been as good as it is.
That's Brian Sean. You probably recognize his voice. He is the TV voice of NDSU Bison football. I recently spent some time with Brian and his wife as he shared his story with colon cancer. He just had surgery. He's going to start chemo soon, and as you heard, he credits genetic testing with saving his life. And as we've been talking about all month, it's Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month. And we wanted to talk a little bit more about genetic testing, how it works, how much it costs, whether or not we can all have it done. So we're going to check in now with Megan Reardon. She's a genetic counselor at Sanford Health. Welcome to North Dakota Today.
Thank you, Lisa.
Well, right off the bat, I want to start with this. When we were visiting with Brian Sean, and I know you can't probably speak specifically to his case, but he kept saying, I had the CHIP test. It was the best thing I did. What is the CHIP test?
Yeah, so the CHIP is a genetic screen that's offered by Sanford Health. It's something that's available to anybody who has my chart and has a Sanford primary care provider.
Now, let's also talk about the cost, because a lot of times you think, well, I can't afford genetic testing, so I'm not going to do it. That's not the case anymore.
Right. Genetic testing is a lot more affordable. This Sanford CHIP costs $49, and other testing that may be ordered by a genetics provider is usually affordable too, talking about, close to $100 for a lot of people.
Why do you think so many people still think that having genetic testing is, unattainable, something they can't have done? I feel like that's something that you guys probably have to battle a little bit.
Yeah, we hear that all the time. And genetic testing used to be very expensive. And just as we've gotten, better with our technology and our knowledge about it, the prices have come down. And so it's very attainable for a lot of people now.
Can you talk a little bit more? I mean, the money is a big one, but number two, how does it work? Is it a blood test? Is it, very invasive?
Nope, typically it is just a blood draw. Some tests are even done with saliva.
Oh, that's easy. And you kind of touched on this, but especially hearing Brian Sean's story, he said he felt pretty good. He didn't have any symptoms, so he went from being A-okay to almost emergency surgery and realizing he had a large cancerous tumor, and he's starting chemo all in a short amount of time. So let's talk about how you can find things like this through genetic testing.
Yeah, so, our ultimate goal with genetic testing, especially with cancer, is that if somebody is at a higher risk for cancer, we can watch them more closely. So maybe that's doing more colonoscopies, or if someone's at a higher risk for breast cancer, maybe we're doing mammograms at earlier ages. And that's our hope, is that we find cancer very early before it even starts to cause any symptoms. And at that point, it's typically easier to treat.
Cancer is the big one. Everyone wants to know if they have cancer, they're going to get cancer. But what are some of the other things that you can find through this genetic testing?
Sure. So the CHIP looks at cancer and then some heart conditions, but really with genetic testing, it's available for all kinds of different things, for things like kidney disease and just lots of stuff.
Can you talk a little bit more too? I mean, we're talking about the CHIP test. It's about $50, but then you hear from people who have actually had it, and going back to Brian Sean, this may have saved his life. We're talking about saving someone's life. How important is it for people to maybe slow down and take a look into possibly scheduling an appointment for themselves?
I think it's very important. I think one of the most important things is knowing your family history and knowing if there is more cancer than we would expect just in the general population. And that can help you with your screening, and it can also help us if you have that history that we might want to do some testing or change your cancer screening.
And are there other tests that go past this chip test? It seems like that's maybe the starting point. Are there other options for genetic testing?
Yes, the chip is just a screening. And so if somebody is really worried about their personal or family history, there may be additional testing that's a little more comprehensive for people who are at higher risk.
Well, Megan, it's fascinating. And once again, tell people how they can go about getting this test. You said through their My Health chart?
Yep. So if you have a Sanford Health primary care provider, are over the age of 18 and have a My Sanford chart, that's the eligibility.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Stay with us. Coming up on North Dakota Today, we're checking in with Hope Inc. to see what they have coming up for the spring.